and welcome to another video to teach you about the wonderful world of Latin. This video is going to teach you about the present system passive verbs of the 3rd-io, and 4th conjugations. So let's review a little bit about what those mean and then dive into our new verb forms. So the present system is the present, imperfect, and future tenses. The 3rd-io, 3rd and 4th conjugation verbs are just groups of verbs that use different endings and different ways of forming their different verb forms so that we can better understand how each verb works in its person, number, tense, voice, and mood. That passive voice, that is one of those two options between active or passive. Remember, verbs can be active or passive depending on whether or not the subject does the action, like with an active verb, or if the action happens to the subject, so a passive verb. So looking at this picture, we can say the man drives the chariot. That is an active verb because the man is doing the driving. The horses pull the chariot. Again, the horses are our subject and are doing the pulling, so our verb is active. If we switch those sentences into the passive voice, we use the helping verb is in English. So the chariot is driven by the man. Now our subject is the chariot and the action is happening to it. Is driven shows it's a passive verb. And then we put the person or instrument that's doing the driving and pulling in a prepositional phrase in English. In English, remember, you will use that helping verb is to make verbs passive. You'll also use that form in the various tenses. So we also need to use that ed form of the verb. So we are loved instead of just we are loving. We are loving is active, we are loved is passive. This is sort of similar to Latin. When you make your present system passive verbs, you just change the ending. So you're used to that O or M, st, mustis, ent with a tense marker to tell you if it's imperfect or future, then a vowel in your stem. And that's your active. If you remember our unit on first and second conjugation, verbs for the imperfect, future, and present passives, you still keep that same stem, those same vowels, the same tense markers, but you use a different ending. Instead of ost, mustis, ent, it's aristur, murminientur. Here that is shown a little bit differently with all 36 forms of the active and the passive in the present system. And you'll see that pretty much the only difference is those endings with aristur, murminientur in the passive. The only thing that's slightly different besides those endings is in that future second person singular, where instead of bi in the active, it's be in the passive because the short I doesn't play well with that ris ending. To preview a little bit of this video, that's going to be a lot of what we see for the 3rd, 4th, and 3rd-io conjugations, where that ending is the aristur, murminientur, and you're still going to use the same tense markers as the active. But notice, as we look down at the future for first conjugation and second conjugation, you use that bor, beris, bitur with the bi. But for 4th conjugation, you're going to use that a and then long e for all the other persons and numbers. So with that introduction, let's look at the present tense. the tense that's happening right now. Remember to make your passive verbs for first and second conjugation instead of ost mustis ent as your ending. You use aristur more minientur. Remember, there is no tense marker for present. If we use the example of third conjugation, we'll use duco, ducere. You find your stem, duc. Remember, because it's a short E, you can't take that stem vowel from the second principal part, so make sure you cut off that ERE or the O from the first principal part. Then we add our vowel. Because it is third conjugation, first person singular stays in O, second person singular is an I, a short I at that, third person singular I, first person and second person plural, also the I, and then third person plural a U. And then you add on your endings, aristur more minientur. Notice that just like we remembered with the future of first and second conjugation, that short I does not play well with the ris, so that I becomes an E. So ducor, I am led, ducaris, you are led, ducitur, it is led, ducimor, we are led, ducimini, y'all are led, ducuntur, they are led. If we look at our 3rd-io, remember the only difference between the 3rd-io and third conjugation verbs is that that first principal part has an io in it, and the second principal part still has the short ere. So it's a subgroup of third conjugation verbs that are just slightly different. And that slight difference is that in the first person singular, there is still the I before the O and the R for first person singular present passive indicative. Then the short I is what you use for other persons and numbers. So it's faceris, you are made. Facetur, the I sticks around for third person singular. Facimor, we are made. Facimini, y'all are made. And then in the third person plural, we have that I before the U in faciuntur. They are made. Make sure you copy these down before we continue to the fourth conjugation. So the fourth conjugation are the ones that you're going to practice for yourselves. And make sure you pause the video. If you don't remember your fourth conjugation, there are a few hints at the bottom of the screen. All right, hopefully you got audior with that IOR for I am heard. Audiris, a nice long I, so that sticks around. And then auditur with another long I now. It is heard. Audimur, we are heard. Audimini, y'all are heard. Audiuntur, they are heard. Now let's move to the imperfect, that ongoing action in the past. So I was seeing or I used to watch. If we look at this for the first conjugation, remember all you did was add bar, baris, batur, so that BA sticks as your tense marker and our aristur, more minientur endings are present. That is going to be, again, what we do for the third conjugation. So you get your DUC ending. Then we need a little buffer vowel or vowels before our ba. For third, it is an E. And then we put in our tense marker, the BA, and then our endings. Duque bar, I was led. Duque baris, it's a long A, so it stays in A. You were being led. Duque batur, it was led. Duque bamor, we were led. Duque bamini, y'all were led. And Duque bantur, they used to be led. Now for the 3rd-io, The only difference is that instead of that E, it is an IE before the BA. So facie bar, I was made, facie baris, you were made, facie batur, it was made, facie bamur, we used to be made, facie bomini, y'all used to be made, facie bantur, they used to be made. Make sure you have these copied down before you practice the imperfect passive of the fourth conjugation. So pause your video and try out the fourth conjugation, passive verbs in the imperfect. Again, if you're not sure what to do, there's some helpful notes down at the bottom. All right, hopefully you got audie bar, I was being heard, or I was heard, audie baris, you were heard, audie batur, it was heard, audie bamur, we used to be heard, audie bomini, y'all used to be heard, audie bantur, they used to be heard. Now let's look at our future. So the thing that will happen in, well, the future, I will see or I will watch. Remember, for first and second conjugation, you use bor, beris, bitur, bimor, bimini, buntur. For third and 3rd-io and fourth, it is an A or a long E for your future tense marker. So after that stem, DUC, for first person singular, it's an A, and then long E. This is where that long E is important because the second person singular is going to be ducaris, slightly different from the present passive indicative second person singular ducaris. So that macron is important. You should make sure you notice it and include it in your chart. So ducar, I will be led, ducaris, you will be led, ducatur, it will be led, ducamur, we will be led, ducamini, y'all will be led, ducentur, they will be led. For the 3rd-io, again, the difference is that all 6 of these forms have an I before that vowel. So faciar, I will be made, facieris, you will be made, facietur, it will be made, faciemur, we will be made, faciemini, y'all will be made, and facientur, they will be made. Make sure you have these written down before you try out the fourth conjugation, future passive indicative verb forms. So pause the video and try. Okay, hopefully you got audiar, I will be heard, audieris, you will be heard, audietur, it will be heard, audiemur, we will be heard, audiemini, y'all will be heard, and audientur, they will be heard. All right, now that we've talked about the indicative mood, we should include the infinitive. So we already talked about for amare and monere, in the active, that E turns into the passive amari and moneri, to be loved and to be warned. This, notice, works with that long A and long E. So for fourth conjugation, it's predictable. Audiri, that long I sticks around and it's IRI. For third and 3rd-io, remember they're the same in the infinitive, so they're going to be the same in the passive infinitive. The short E is not strong enough to stick around, so that ERE totally disappears and it becomes dookie, to be led, and faki, to be made. Let's look at some translations with the passive voice with these third, 3rd-io, and fourth conjugation verbs. Remember, when you translate the passive voice, you're going to use ablative of personal agent and ablative of means to know who is doing the action or what is doing the action to the subject. So, dona a puero parvo invenie bantur. The gifts were being found by the small boy. That a puero parvo is our ablative of personal agent by the small boy, who is actually doing the finding of the gifts. But the dona are our subject, and the one doing the action is the agent here. So the ablative of agent with your preposition a or ab. In our second example, animal cornibus defenditur, the action is not being done by a person, it's being done by a tool or instrument, so we're using the ablative of means or ablative of instrument cornibus. The animal is defended by the horns. By the horns is doing the defending, and it's the animal that the defense is happening to, so the subject of our passive verb, defenditur. All right, now that you've learned these forms, let's check your understanding. Once you have completed these, call me over and I will check your work and then tell you what to do next. Thank you.